The Labours of Hercules, Practical Work for Every Soul. A talk by Yiannis Pittis. Please note that as a result of the tape recording and copying process, there will be a bit of blank tape at the end of this A-side and an equal amount at the beginning of the B-side. So, when the speaking stops on this A-side, stop the tape, turn it over, and play it from that point on the B-side. You will have missed only a second or two of what the speaker was saying. This lecture forms part of a series with the overall title The Path of Transformation, held at the headquarters of the Theosophical Society, 50 Gloucester Place, London, W1U8EA, in the winter of the year 2008. It took place on Sunday the 10th of February, was entitled The Labours of Hercules, Practical Work for Every Soul, and was given by Yiannis Pittis. The programme notes summarise its contents thus. The Hercules myth is the story of a son of man who is also the son of God, and that is the case for every human being. The labours that Hercules accomplished represent fields of opportunity that each of us must face and overcome in the arduous journey of evolution towards the mountain of attainment. As the soul passes through each of the 12 gates, it enters the world of duality and battles with the forces of limitation and resistance. In this lecture, we will interpret the myth and reveal the keys veiled in the narrative, which we can use to be more effective in all aspects of our lives. Yiannis Pittis has been teaching the Kabbalah and other esoteric disciplines for more than 20 years and runs a successful spiritual centre in Sussex.
Good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure for me to speak from this platform once again, being that such great eminent teachers have facilitated the Theosophical teaching over the last century or so. For me, it is always a privilege to be here and to give talks or workshops on the subject matters that you all have an interest that pertain to the evolution of humanity. I usually like to start, even though it is a lecture, with a short meditation which allows us all to gather and be as a group here, because we are many individuals, come from the different parts of the country or London, and naturally by going through a meditative process then we create a group consciousness and we are much more present in the here and now. So if you like to close your eyes for a moment, take a comfortable deep breath. Bring your awareness to the navel center, your belly button. There see a blue point of light, and as you breathe in and out, see the blue point of light expanding and radiating, creating a beautiful blue sphere. The color blue is a frequency that we borrow from planet Earth, as its aura is blue, and it symbolizes our physical form. So the blue sphere encompasses our lower abdomen, the private area, comes out to the front and to the back, and up to the area of the solar plexus. See this blue sphere as well defined as you can, and we choose a sphere because it is the symbol of wholeness, and that is what we want for our physical form. May perfect health and wholeness reign in our physical bodies. And bring your awareness into the heart center. See a pink point of light there. Pink is the color of affection and love that we radiate. See that radiance to create a beautiful pink sphere that encompasses your shoulders, your lungs, your chest, coming out to the front and to the back, upwardly towards the throat, and links with the blue sphere like two links of a chain. Declare this pink sphere to represent the field of your emotional world. May harmony and beauty reign in our emotional bodies. Bring your awareness now to the midpoint of your head, and there see a golden point of light. And as you breathe in and out, see the golden point of light radiating and creating a beautiful golden sphere. a golden sphere that encompasses the whole of your head area, like a halo that you see in the pictures of saints. It represents your mental field of ideas and thoughts. May the light of wisdom illuminate our minds to know truth as is. We see the golden sphere linked now in the throat area with the pink, and the pink with the blue sphere. These three represent our threefold personality. We see ourselves to be here in this place in space. With the power of our imagination, we now see ourselves stepping out, and we float into a violet light, upwardly in space, all heavier matter fading away. We arrive in the holy mountain of Olympus. There are some clouds that cover the peak, and when they clear, we see the magnificence of what nature has created of her own accord, these 12 great thrones on the peak of the Mount Olympus. We envisage the 12 great gods and goddesses of the ancient Greek times. We see them descending in bodies made out of light particles. They each take their particular throne. The aura that vibrates and emanates from them touches the very essence of our consciousness, uplifts it, and we tune in for a moment to that divine plan of evolution for all living beings. The 12 beings radiate blessings in every direction, like waves of light that cascade down the mountain, permeating all dimensions, empowering the spiritual dispensation of our current times for all human beings. When their moment of radiance and meditation come to an end, we are each invited to meet whichever of the 12 gods we so choose and ask whatever question that we may have and receive what they have for us in a moment of silence. At that moment, also Hercules enters the stage, a powerful presence, and he has a gift for each and every one of us. Make a note in your consciousness of what it is that he gives to you. It pertains to your current stage of evolution. It is a symbol, a word, a quality, whatever it may be. It is of value to you at this time. You give thanks, and you are given the gift and some words of encouragement for your journey ahead. Where all have received their due, the great beings withdraw into the invisible realms once again, leaving us a state of peace and well-being. From the mountaintop, where we feel as points of light within the greater radiance of light, as strands of loving energy within that stream of love divine that cascades to all the world down the mountain, we make our return journey to this place in space, into our physical forms as men and women, knowing that we each have a divine duty and a purpose to fulfill. We bring that light into our threefold personality, the golden, the pink, and the blue spheres. We take a comfortable deep breath, and see that divine I Am presence like a central beam of light, like a laser beam, that interpenetrates the zenith of our aura through the golden, pink, and blue spheres to the nadir of our aura. We identify with that beam of light. We are one with that I am presence. And from it radiate myriads of fine rays through the three vehicles of the personality into the greater aura that blends with the auras of all present here in this place in space into one greater group consciousness. And when we are ready, we may open our eyes and be here. Thank you. Our subject matter today is mythology, and particularly the Greek mythology, and specifically the tasks of Hercules. What is mythology? Mythology is a system by means of which the truths of one age may be preserved and handed to the next age. The truths of one age become the myths of another. Mythology is, at one and the same time, veils these truths from the profane and reveals them to those that have the keys to unlock the myths. And the myths of the world are all reservoirs of spiritual knowledge and guidance if we were able to interpret them. And the Greek myths are particularly rich in all the spiritual guidance that we may need even for our current times. There are certain keys by means of which we can interpret the mythology of our Greek times, even of your English heritage, or of the Nordic mythology, or of the Hindu mythology. It does not matter. The same keys apply to all, because it is from the same source that most of the mythologies have been given out to the world. What are these keys? One of these keys is that the myths contain certain symbols. What is a symbol? A symbol is the outward and visible expression of the inward and invisible reality that it veils. A symbol is a means by which our consciousness can penetrate into the inner, hidden aspect of life. All outer things on appearance are but symbols that veil the hidden reality. Our bodies are symbols of the hidden I am presence. A flower is a hidden, it hides the presence of an intelligence that expresses itself through that flower. And so, ultimately, the outward and visible expressions are but that which is in the realm of appearance, veiling the infinite hierarchy of intelligences that emanates from the one source. And so, the study of symbology is an essential part for every student, because by endeavoring to interpret symbols, we trigger in our consciousness that higher faculty that may be termed as intuition or inner vision. Why is it important to unfold our intuition? Because then you can be self-reliant. You don't need teachers. You don't need books. You will not need... Somebody's trying to get in and are not able to. They have persevered. Knock and you shall enter. So, we have said what mythology is, and we have said that one of the keys is the symbols that each of the mythology contains. Another of the keys is numbers. What are numbers? Numbers represent the unchanging principles by means of which all change comes into manifestation. Numbers, Pythagoras said, are the foundations upon which the whole edifice of the universe is established. Numbers are the only exact science. Numbers are really the laws by means of which the whole creation comes into being, by means of which every living thing in creation is sustained, and by means of which every living thing in creation will fulfill its inherent potentiality. And so if humanity were to attune itself to the laws of universal life, then a lot of the suffering that we all endure will come to an end. So therefore it is vital and important that we study the numbers and the laws not only as figures in our bank accounts, whether they are in the plus or in the minus. It is very interesting, isn't it, that when you have many zeros behind a number, it adds to your wealth. But when you have many zeros in front of the number, it detracts from your wealth. So numbers are very important, so be aware. Certainly, another of the keys of interpreting mythology is language, but a special kind of language, a language that is allegorical, a language that truly veils certain truths if you are aware of what each of the word means. As an example, the outer events represent also inner happenings. Inner happenings to a race, to a nation, to an individual, or to a group. When the events in the narrative relate to ordinary people, then we are talking about the early stages of evolution of the human being. When they relate to heroes and initiates and advanced beings, angels and archangels, then we are talking about events that are happening to the intermediate stage of our evolution, i.e. the initiatic stage, the disciple stage. And when we are talking about avatars and gods and magnificent spiritual lords of the divine love and light, then we are talking about the latest stages of our evolution, the more advanced stages of our evolution. Along with that, there is a specific language, as we said. So mountains always are representative of higher states of consciousness. That is why many great teachers always, it is said, climb up to a mountaintop where they receive the laws or they receive the truth or they give the Sermon on the Mount as our Lord Jesus Christ. Valleys represent fields of experience. Rivers represent movement of energies. Caves represent our subconscious. Lakes represent our emotional states in a peaceful condition. Seas, turbulent seas, represent turbulent emotions. Sea monsters represent the negative and destructive emotions that roam within our emotional body and create the various problems that we encounter. By the same token, mythical beasts of more elevated kind represent higher spiritual intelligences, higher spiritual virtues, higher spiritual powers, or siddhis as they may be termed. So there is such a language in mythology, in the narratives of all religions. And if we understand it, then it is simple to actually interpret what it is said in the myth or in the narrative of any particular religious doctrine. The myths also have three aspects to them. They contain historical facts upon which initiatic writers have clothed them with allegorical, mystical, and symbolical meanings. And therefore, the interpretation of any myth can be historical or allegorical and mystical. But certain myths also contain cosmic truths. Cosmic truths of what has actually happened upon this planet, in our solar system, in the universe, that has been locked down in the great inner libraries of the world and has been given out to the world by series of spiritual dispensations by one or other teacher of the East or of the West. Naturally, in the narrative, you will have certain events that pertain to specific time, given to specific people in a specific locality of the world, which was appropriate for them. But in the allegorical meanings that are attached to those historical facts, you will find truths that are as valid today as they ever have been, as they will ever be because they are eternal truths. They are not subject to time. They are not subject to one cycle or another. And the laws also, and the numbers also, represent small cycles or greater cycles. Whether those cycles of time represent the individual evolution, the group evolution, or the humanity's evolution, or the solar system's evolution. So, the myth of Hercules is a myth that relates to a specific being who gave to the world tremendous acts. He was not a being that gave teaching by means of words, but more by the means of deeds. Whereas Jesus the Christ gave the teaching, and the Buddha by means of deeds, as well as also powerful words that we have in the narrative of their religious doctrines. Just like all of these great beings gather around themselves, either 12 students or they have 12 particular principles which embody their teaching, so it is with Hercules, has his 12 tasks. Why number 12 and not any other number? Because the human consciousness is threefold in its attributes. It has the divine will within it, the divine love, wisdom, and the divine creative intelligence. And as there are four worlds of manifested existence, i.e. the realm of emanations, the realm of creations, the realm of formations, and the realm of outer appearances, i.e. spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. So when you multiply 3 by 4, what do you get? You get 12. And therefore, 12 is the number of the creative hierarchies that facilitate evolution. It also represents the symbolical movement of the sun through the 12 constellations, and therefore we are talking about a grand cycle of time of 25,000 years approximately, where the sun moves through the 12 constellations, and as each spiritual entity is embodying and emulating the sun in manifestation, so he also has his 12 students, or she has the 12 students, whether it's a male or a female teacher. And therefore, what these 12 represent is the fields of opportunity through which a student is receiving the impacts of energy from one or other of the 12 astrological influences, and is able to overcome the negative elements and manifest the positive elements, so that when he has gone through the 12 gates, the 12 fields of opportunity, mastered the energies therein, clockwise and then anti-clockwise, as it is said, then they can become the great initiate, the great fulfiller of their inherent potentiality, reach the state of perfection for our cycle of time, and become one of the ascended masters or the ascended beings. It is said by Plato that every 25,000 years the gods descend on earth and give a spiritual dispensation to accelerate the human evolution. It was 25,000 years ago that the gods walked the earth, and it was then also the Aquarian Great Age. And at that time, the Olympian dynasty was established, and all that they represented with all their heroes and the demigods and the great initiates of the time, they were involved in something that has been lost through the aeons of time, but it is recorded in the Akashic records, and it is recorded in the inner libraries that are protected by the greatest spiritual hierarchy of humanity on this planet. There was a great battle between the forces of darkness and the forces of light. The spiritual hierarchy of our planet invoked the assistance of the beings who are part of the universal alliance of the 13 constellations in our universe. And this alliance facilitates free will in all the solar systems and all the planets upon which life is evolving. But there are other beings in the universe who do not align themselves with this universal alliance, who do not want to facilitate free will, who want to use lower forms of intelligence as instruments for their own designs. They are known as the renegades. And the Bible also speaks about the renegades, yes? And at many a times, humanity has become the football that is kicked around by one or other of these superior intelligences, some of which have manifested, some of which have used human forms and ensouled them with their own intelligence and given wrong teachings, wrong guidance, and misled the human soul of humanity. But then we are not an orphan as a human family. We have always been in the presence of great teachers, more illumined beings, who have anchored upon this planet the divine will, the divine love, wisdom, and creative intelligence. But because they are supreme upholders of the free will of human beings, they do not interfere with our natures. They lead by example, they lead by inspiration, not by coercion, not by power of their will to impress upon us what they want us to do. God does not want robots. God wants you and me and all of us to choose of our own accord, to exercise our own free will, our own divine attributes, our own spiritual inheritance, and manifest in our everyday life that which Plato called the good, the beautiful, and the true. And therefore it's essential that we understand that right here today, at this time, we are in such a crisis as it was 25,000 years ago. You may not be aware of it because there are no bombs dropping in your doorstep at this moment in time. But climatic changes are happening. The axis of the planet has not fully balanced as yet, and there are great, powerful forces that endeavor to manipulate human consciousness in one or other direction. And at the same time, the greatest spiritual hierarchy is also in deep meditation, sending waves of love and light to all humanity, for all groups and all individuals who are open and awake to be touched by that hand of godness, by that hand of love and light, that they may manifest that which is beautiful, good, and true in their endeavors. And so every time you say no to an aspect in you that feeds upon negativity, that facilitates negativity, that supports negative and destructive elements, then you are standing for the alliance of love and light and spiritual evolution that facilitates free will. And every time you yield to those negative forces and you give them room and expression in your own kingdom, in your own world, then you are saying yes to the darker forces. And the darker forces have manipulating ways who can actually infiltrate your mind in the most in the times when you least expect it. And so it is always said by spiritual teachers that vigilance is the key upon the path of evolution for every student. Vigilance to detect what is negative, what is destructive, what is from falsehood and not from reality. Because ultimately, when we unfold the faculty of discernment that can tell that from which is false from the real, that can tell that which leads us towards immortality and love and light from that which leads us to destruction and mortality, then indeed we are facilitating the spiritual dispensation of the hierarchy of our planet that wishes that all the kingdoms on this planet evolve and unfold their inherent potentiality. And so today it is a time of crisis. There are many spiritual events that are happening. The planet itself is upgrading the electromagnetic grid of its energies. Just like we upgrade the electromagnetic grid in an old house so that we can put greater instruments that can take greater power of electricity. If the planet is doing that, then also all organic life on the planet is upgrading its electromagnetic grid as well. And therefore every human being has an opportunity to upgrade that electromagnetic grid within their own constitution. There is also this great spiritual dispensation that is happening at this time, that is the Aquarian expansion as we have entered the new age of Aquarius. And so, when we begin to interpret now the myth of Hercules, let us bear in mind that each one of us is a Hercules at this time if we would only take on that duty and truly perform the 12 tasks in such a way that we manifest such a powerful signal for all mankind. Because it is said that, you may have heard this point about the omega point, that when enough human beings vibrate in a certain frequency of love and light, then the whole humanity can be upgraded and uplifted to a higher stage. And so it is the duty of every student on the path to vibrate in that frequency that enables other human beings who may not have been as fortunate to come in contact with the books, with the literature, with the teachings, with the education that has opened their minds and hearts to also be touched, whether it is at our work, in our everyday lives, in whatever field of endeavor we are basically the exponents of the inner mysteries, and that is how we can be the Hercules in our everyday existence in the here and now. So, what does Hercules mean? It means really the glory of the soul. And each and every human being is indeed a spiritual soul, and the journey of evolution is about unfolding the glory of that spiritual soul in manifestation. And so when the student, who is Hercules, comes before the teacher asks him, "What is your name?" And he says, "My name is Hercules." Though he began as Alcides, he adopted the name of Hercules when he accepted the vocation and the duty and the purpose that he was to fulfill. In the same way as Jacob, when he wrestled with an angel, then he adopted the name of Israel, which was his duty to fulfill, to establish the reality in incarnate existence in that particular part of the world at that time, in the Israelites of our racial stock of humanity. And so Hercules answered that when the teacher asked him, "What does your name mean?" he said, "It means Hera's glory." Hera was the goddess, the wife of Zeus, of Theus. She was a great goddess, and she has been much misunderstood. And all of the suggestions that she was a jealous goddess and she always interfered with the life of Hercules are but veils that veil a hidden mystery which we will try to interpret here today. So Hercules then was asked, how old was he? And he said 18 moons had passed when he had slain the lion, and now he wore his skin. Then he was asked whether he knew his mother and his father, and what and who are they. And he said, "My father is divine, but I know him not, yet I feel his presence within me. My mother is earthly. She has given me the form which you now see. I am born a twin. There is another one like me," meaning Iphicles. In the same way as there is Jesus and Christ, in the same way as there is Esau and Jacob. And so always there is a twin, and we will interpret that as well. Then the teacher asked him, what of his education? And he boasted and said, "I have read all the books available. I am skilled in all the arts. I have traveled. I have seen the world. I am ready for service. But before you accept me, O great teacher, let me tell you something that I have done so that you know my nature. I have killed all my teachers." "A good thing that you have done," said the great teacher. What does that mean? Should I be afraid now and hide behind the table? It is important to understand that all of us at some point of time need to stand in our own 2 feet, in our own consciousness, and be free from dogmas, from doctrines, from other teachers' influences. But not too early, not before we have really awakened our own intuitive faculties so that we can be self-reliant. Because if we try to do it before it's time, then it is false pride, and it only leads us to being isolated, lonely, and ignorant. And so there is a time for striking that kind of a statement, and there is a time for being full of humility and opening your heart and mind and receiving the teaching from those that may have traveled a little further on the path. Then he was asked, what does he want as a duty? And he said, to serve my fellow human beings. Very well, said he, I will report to the Great Council of the Alliance of Universal Beings and then report back to you. He reported to the council, and the Lord of the council said, may the gods descend, acknowledge him, guide him, and give him their gifts. And there comes Athena, the great goddess of wisdom. And she brings, with all the light of wisdom, this beautiful robe which she embroidered herself and gives it to Hercules. He puts it on, full of joy and pride, and feels really totally at ease in it. Then comes Hephaestus, the great engineer of the gods, the great creative, constructive intelligence of the gods. And he gives him a breastplate to protect the life forces in his heart. Then comes Poseidon, the god of the seas, and brings to him 2 powerful white stallions. He hands the reins to Hercules, and Hercules knows that indeed there is power in these stallions, and perhaps he might not yet be ready to ride them freely, but in due course he hopes to be able to do so. Then comes Hermes with all the magnificence of speech, and gives him the gift of a powerful, beautifully designed sword. He straps it on his thigh and says to him, may you keep it always sharp, and cut and divide, and always use it for the good of the whole. And he knew that the sword was a powerful instrument to be used for service in the world. And finally comes Apollo, the great god of the sun and light, the being that brings healing and tremendous radiance of inspiration. He meditated deeply as to what gift to give to Hercules. And in the end, he decided to give a bow and arrow. Hercules took it, and he knew that perhaps 9 gates will be passed until he enters Sagittarius, where he can truly master the meaning of the bow and arrow and be able to use it effectively to reach the goal of his purpose. He played with his gifts for a moment, and the gods watched with expectation. And then he put them all down and ran into the forest and came back with a big club. And he said, O ye gods, none have given this to me. I have fashioned it myself from nature. Watch over me and see the great deeds that I shall do. I stand before thee 4 cubits height, and I will manifest many great deeds. Just watch me. And then the gods withdrew. He went to rest for a while before he began his great tasks of passing through each of the 12 gates so that he may fulfill his purpose. So, what is the number 12? We have already explained, but it is actually present in all religions. We know that Jesus had 12 disciples. We know that the Buddha had the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path and his 12 bhikshus. We know that Jacob had his 12 sons. We know that Arthur Pendragon has his 12 knights. St. James and the 12 altars. St. John the Divine and the gates of Jerusalem, and with the threefold gates that existed in each of the directions, and so and forth and so on. The 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 great priests of the Israelite religion, and in all the cultures, the 12 principle is present. And so in ancient times with the 12 gods and the 12 tasks of Hercules. Hercules represents the fixed cross of the 12-fold astrological signs. The fixed cross has 4 signs in it. The sign of the bull, the sign of Leo, the sign of Scorpio, and the sign of Aquarius. And the way that Hercules was always depicted was with a neck like a bull, which represents the power to do, the occult power to do. And he manifested the occult power to do in all his tasks. He certainly conquered the lion. Yes? He conquered the lion. And what is the meaning of conquering the lion? He wore the skin of the lion. The first lion that he killed, and he wore its skin, is the killing of fear, the fear of fear. No student on the path can succeed to travel very high if he is full of fear. Fear can stop you on your path. So you must face your fears, howsoever they arise, and go beyond them. And when you do, you kill the first lion, and you become a Hercules wearing the skin of the lion, meaning that you cannot be feared, you cannot be penetrated by anything that can use fear in your consciousness. Because the powers of darkness will use fear to penetrate through you. What would you do if the powers of darkness suggest, through their various governments that are in power, and say, right, now we want to put a chip in every one of your brains, and with this chip, actually, we will be able to send wonderful waves of energy, and we will manipulate your genetic structure in such a way that no diseases will flare up within you. Because of your fear, you will say, yes, of course, I don't want any diseases, I accept that. But what else can they also send through that chip to control your mind and manipulate it? So I don't make a political statement in saying that. This is not a platform for that. But I am making a spiritual statement that the free will of mankind must not be interfered by such things, and we must have a choice. And therefore, chips in our brains for such purposes are not appropriate, whether they are going to cure our diseases or they are going to control us and make us all very placid and subjective to the will of the government, whatever the government happens to be in that moment in time. Yeah. So we must be all vigilant in our political life, in our spiritual life, in our family life, in every aspect and every walk of existence, if we are truly to act and manifest these truths in our incarnate existence. And it is the duty of every human being to do that. The Scorpio, when he was still, Hercules, when he was still in the cradle, he actually strangled the 2 serpents. What are the 2 serpents a symbol of? The 2 serpents are a symbol of the attraction of matter on the one hand and the illusion of separateness on the other hand. And when you actually strangle those 2 serpents, what does that mean? That means silencing the promptings that come from the material aspects of life and from the illusion of separateness, which can no longer control you. And when you have silenced these lower passions that are triggered by the appearance of matter in one or other alluring form, and by the illusion of separateness that make you selfish towards your neighbor, then perhaps the 3rd serpent can be awakened and rise and manifest through you that which is known as the serpent of wisdom. There is always three serpents in all the narratives. Yes, the serpent of and the serpent of wisdom. And only when those two are silenced, then the third serpent arises. But of course, Hercules had to re-encounter the serpent in one of the gates, which was Scorpio, and he had to deal with the Hydra, the nine-headed monster. Yes, the monster of illusion that lurks in the nature of every human being, and every Hercules, every soul needs to face it and deal with it and go beyond that illusion. And finally, he is representing the Aquarian man, who is a being who has now acknowledged the spiritual dispensation, has embodied it in himself, has attained those powers that he can now place in service to the group. And indeed, this is vital and important because we are in the Aquarian age, and I will choose the Aquarian sign to interpret through the task of Hercules here today to begin with, because it is apt for our Aquarian age, and also for this specific time, because Aquarius is between January and February, and we are in that time now. But I'm also talking about the greater cycle of the Aquarian age that begins this grand dispensation of another 25,000 year cycle. Yes, every 2,160 years, this intensity of energy changes from one age to another age. We have passed through the age of Aries, we have passed through the age of Taurus, we have passed through the age of the Piscean age, and Jesus Christ has spoken that I will be with you till the end of time. And the end of time has come. The end of time of the Piscean age has come, and the new beginning of the Aquarian age is here. And a new dispensation is actually happening. The Christ consciousness is manifesting in the group, not in an individual, but in all humanity. And there will be individuals and groups all over the world of whatever color and race and nationality they may be, who are responding to the Christ frequency or to the Buddha frequency. But because Christ and Buddha mean the two aspects of love wisdom. Christ in perfect exponent of love, and Buddha the perfect exponent of wisdom. And both together represent the divine attribute of love wisdom in the universal consciousness. Hercules represents the divine will. So he was an exponent of the first ray, of the ray of will. And so let us interpret what do these gifts that he received. He received only gifts from 5 of the gods and goddesses, not from all 12. That is symbolic of the fivefold nature of the human being. As we know, when we stand up in our outer appearance, we represent a fivefold star. And we are a fivefold being. And these 5 gifts represent also the 5 aspects of the human being, and also the 5 elements. Athena, in her wisdom, clothed him with the robe that also Elisha received from Elijah, the robe that of many colors that was given to Benjamin, the robe that the Christ wore, the robe of great glory that the soldiers fought over and torn to pieces. And so what does the robe represent? The robe represents the physical or the constitution of what the human being is manifesting through, and the purpose of that constitution in this current time, whatever that may be. In other words, whatever vocation that constitution is to fulfill, whatever purpose that constitution is to fulfill. And every soul chooses it's the unique particular constitution through parentage and genetics and so on and so forth, because that particular constitution will serve the vocation of the purpose that the soul wishes to fulfill in each particular incarnate existence. The breastplate is a shield, it's an electromagnetic shield that will protect the heart, which is the reservoir of the life force, from all of the attacks of the insidious, from all the negative arrows of distraction. Because if the life in the heart comes to an end, then you cannot manifest the vocation and the purpose. So this is the fire in the heart that can burn all the dross. It is said that there is a giant weed that grows in the heart of every human being. And that weed must be pulled out. And when it does get pulled out, the heart bleeds. And it feels as if the whole life ebbs away. And indeed, only the strong can pull it out. The weak must wait until it grows, it withers, and dies, and suffer the consequences of that. But there is also a wild beast in the heart of everyone, because there is an inner jungle as well as an outer jungle. And in the same way as we have tamed the beasts of the outer jungle and the world and have made them domesticated and put them to service, so we must domesticate the forces within our own heart and make them to serve the greater divine plan and purpose. And so this shield is to protect us until that awakened consciousness has grown enough to be able to actually do what needs to be done. It is for that reason that the Christ was born in a manger in the cave of the heart, surrounded by domesticated animals, but not by wild beasts. Because wild beasts, which are the predatory emotions within us, will devour the newborn child, i.e. the newborn, loving, Christ-like consciousness or Herculean heroic consciousness. And so it is important that we look in our hearts and learn to tame those wild forces and pull out that giant weed from our inner garden of peace. Else it will never be an inner garden of peace. The horses of Poseidon, they represent the emotional nature, and the white stallions are always the purified emotion that can act as an instrument through which you can put your consciousness and rapport with higher states of being, can put your consciousness and rapport with higher intelligences. When you have purified the emotions, you are able to ride the higher emotions and connect through the intuitive faculty with higher truths and higher realities. For it is the mind that seeks, but it is the heart that unites. It is the emotion that connects. And therefore, when it is purified, then its symbol, esoterically, is the white horse or the unicorn in your current culture of mythology. And the gift of Hermes is, of course, the air principle and the mind and the speech that embodies the ideas of the mind. And it is the mind that it is like a sword that differentiates and cuts and separates. But it can separate to facilitate the forces of distraction, or it can separate to facilitate the forces of love and light. When you separate the false from the true, when you separate that which is destructive from that which is constructive, when you cut away all the dross and leave the gold of truth and wisdom in any given situation, then you are using the sword of Hermes. And when you speak in such a way that leaves no doubt about the truths that you are highlighting, when you speak in such a way that leaves no room for misinterpretation, for misappropriation, for misintegration of what it is that you are revealing, the ideas that you are conveying, then you are using the sword of Hermes to cut away all the falsehood and reveal the truth. And the arrow and bow of Apollo, it's really that instrument that when the student learns how to use, it is the power that you have in your base of the spine, in your hips, and when you shoot the arrow through the central channel of your spine, the Sushumna, as the Indians call, then that arrow can reach the highest destination, the crown, and explode the manifestation of divine authority in all aspects of your life. The bow and arrow is really, the bow represents your personality, and the arrow represents the divine aspiration that your personality can shoot towards the higher realm, the higher intelligence, the higher truths that you can penetrate to the heart of the matter directly without having to go through the argumentativeness of the mind. And yet, Hercules, it is said, took all these tools and then put them aside and went in the forest to get his own club. What does that represent for us? We need to understand that because it is very important. It represents that aspect that you have unfolded to the highest in this stage of your evolution, at this step of the ladder which you stand. When you can identify what that is, what is the most unfolded faculty, quality in yourself, when you can identify that in your nature, then you can make use of that to penetrate and help and facilitate the unfolding of all other faculties and all other qualities. You all have a unique way by means of which you win things, by means of which you attain things, by means of which you accomplish whatever it is that you set for yourself as a task. What is that? You must find it out. You must identify it and then polish it, unfold it even further, and make use of it to bring up to the same level all other aspects in your nature. That is what the clap represents. It is that one faculty that we have unfolded to the maximum that can be our own unique instrument. No one has given that to us. No gods, no men. We have ourselves created and unfolded. And so, when we have identified that, then we can begin to enter through each of the 12 gates and perform the tasks and the labors that lie therein, and move onwards to fulfill the duty and attain the fulfillment of the cycle of our evolution. The particular task that I will choose to interpret and work with here today is the one that deals with the cleansing of the stables of Augeas. There was a king called Augeas, and the teacher came to Hercules and said, "There is a cry from the people of the land where the king Augeas rules, that there is great pestilence and terrible disease all around. For 30 years, the many cattle that Augeas controls and all the dung that they produce have filled the stables, have filled the pastures, and nothing can grow, and only disease and pestilence is all around. And there needs to be a hero that can come and save the kingdom." And Hercules presents himself to the king Augeas and says to him, "I shall clear the stables in one day for no reward." And the wily king thought, "I have heard of beings trying to clear the stables for some kind of reward, but I have never heard of anyone offering to clean the stables for no reward. You have some cunning plan to deceive me of my kingdom." And it's always the way that if you are offering some service for no reward, and the spiritual teachers do that, then what's in his mind? What's his ulterior motive? He's after my pocket. He's after whatever I have. And it's always that cunning that is at play. And so he said, "I'll tell you what, lest I be thought as a foolish king, I will make a bargain with thee. If truly you shall cleanse the stables in one day, I shall give you 1/10 of all my cattle and kingdom." So, because the king didn't think that Hercules would succeed, of course he made that offer. So Hercules went forth, and as he entered the place, the stench almost sent him over with a fainting heart, because it was so powerful. So he thought that I will withdraw from this place and meditate to find the truth. And he saw 2 great rivers flowing nearby. Aphius and Peneus are their names. And these two great rivers inspired in him a cunning plan. So he went and broke the perimeter of the wall of the stables in two places, and also broke two holes in the stables, and diverted the two rivers through those openings, through the two openings, and let the flow of the river cleanse the dung from the stables. And knowing, behold, the power of the rivers, fulfilled the task. He went back to Augeas and said, I have fulfilled the task. And Augeas inspected and said, yes, but you did not do it yourself. You used cunning. So I do not accept that the bargain is done. I banish you from my kingdom. And if you return, I shall cut your head off, as I am the king. Knowing, behold, Hercules, as he didn't want any reward in the first place, withdrew and meditated and reconciled in himself that often the saviors of the world receive the poisoned chalice. As Madame Blavatsky often said, that being a teacher in the world is always drinking from the poisoned chalice, because the very ones that you seek to help and bring the light to will attack you, will accuse you, will undermine you, will seek to reveal you in their worst light, cast a shadow over you, throw the blanket over you to cover your light so that their light may shine the more. And so we all do varying degrees of that. When we are in the presence of somebody who we think is a little bit bright, we try to undermine them, lest they show our own inadequacies. Is that not what the Sadducees and Pharisees were doing to Jesus? Because his innocence, his purity, his wisdom, his love, his light was so self-evident that they had to accuse him, to throw blankets over him, to undermine him, so that they can hold on to their own temporal authority which they had. And so it is with the hearts of everyone who does that. We must learn not to practice that evil in our everyday lives. So let us try to interpret what this mystery is all about. What do the 30 years of dung represent? The 30 years is a cycle, and these 30 years represent the three great races of mankind and the collective karma that has been accumulated over these three great cycles: the Lemurian age, the Atlantean age, and the Aryan age. These are the three great ages. Number 30 is 3 times 10. Number 10 is the completion of one cycle and the beginning of another. And so 3 complete cycles had been fulfilled, and all the karmic consequences, the dark dung that humanity produces in its evolution, indeed fill the stables. What are the cattle? The cattle are the human beings. Who is the king? The king is our divine self, who is in charge of all human beings. And we also have that principle, the threefold nature of our personality individually. The physical, emotional, and mental, they are the threefold cycles which produce the individual karmic consequences and the negative dung that needs to be cleared. What are the two rivers? The two rivers and the two openings represent the opening of the mind and the opening of the heart individually. And the two rivers are the rivers of light and the rivers of love. And when you have the river of light illuminating an open mind, and the river of heart, or the river of love cleansing an open heart, then you can radiate that love to all living beings and radiate that light to reveal the truth in the moments of ignorance and in the darkness of ignorance. And so, number 30 also represents the 3 decans of each of the signs. The 3 decans means 30 degrees that is ruled by one planetary influence, 30 degrees by another planetary influence, and 30 degrees by another planetary influence. So in the Aquarian sign, we have these 30 degrees. The first 10 are ruled by Saturn, and we are now in the Aquarian age under the Saturnian influence. What is the Saturnian influence? It is the influence of constriction, of limitation, and of discipline. It is the influence of breaking down all the barriers and revealing new opportunities. It is the great disciplinarian. And without discipline, we cannot really make steps in our evolution. The breaking down of the walls are the breaking down of the walls of separateness in our own inner nature, so that we can have an integral nature, and the walls of separateness between our neighbor, between another nation, between another race. If we do not break down those walls of separateness between one religion and another religion, then we remain in our dung. We cannot see the beauty of the divine plan that unfolds in the many nations, in the many ethnic realities, in the many religions, all endeavoring to unfold the best, the beautiful, the good, and the true. And we cannot then share from the best that they have to offer. We reject because of our ignorance. And so breaking down the walls of the stable and the perimeter wall is breaking down those prejudices and those walls of separateness that keep us isolated from our neighbor, from our group, from our humanity. For we are all one family. And in one family, the elders take care of the younger ones until they are able to take care of themselves. And so must the elder nations take care of the younger nations. But the greed is what rules. Perhaps slowly we are waking up to that reality that greed, as Gecko said, is not good. He said that it is good. But in reality, ultimately, greed is leading us to distraction. It is greed that led many wars in the past, and it is greed that leads many wars in the current times. And it is when we, as human beings, say no to greed, but promote the spirit that acknowledges there is an abundance and there is enough for all, and we say no to this illusion of moreness, more of this and more of that, and we get imprisoned with the golden handcuffs of material acquisitions of one kind or another. As Gandhi said, there is enough in the world to feed all living beings and all needs, but there is not enough to feed all greeds. And that is the unfortunate reality of our current times. We need to go beyond that, break down those barriers. And so the three decans of the Aquarian age represent the first stage of the disciplining ourselves, because without the discipline, you cannot really fulfill anything. You cannot be an accountant without taking the discipline of an accountant. You cannot be a footballer without taking the discipline of playing football. You cannot be a musician of any instrument without taking the discipline that allows you to learn that. And so it is with the spiritual path. Unless you take on board the spiritual disciplines, you cannot unfold the spiritual faculties and qualities. And as one of the great teachers said, the rule of measure for the appropriate spiritual disciplines does not lie in the many champagne drinking halls of the world. It lies in the hearts and minds of those who know truth as is, of those who radiate love and light in the world. And it is to them that we must open our hearts and minds, that we may become inspired by what are the necessary disciplines by means of which we can realize our inherent potentiality in the now. The second planetary influence of the second 10 degrees in Aquarius is that of Mercury and Uranus. Some astrologers speak of Mercury as the second influence, but ultimately it is the Uranian influence, because Uranus is the alter ego of Mercury. It is the higher aspect of Mercury. And what does Uranian influence? Uranian influence is that of originality. And it is through original ideas, through original new ways of dealing with problems, not in the old ways of dealing with problems, that we will free ourselves from the suffering in our world. And the Aquarian spirit of group consciousness is not yet with us. I have been to many groups in the world. I have become a member of many groups of the world. And alas, what I have seen is more a field of pride, a field of trying to be superior, trying to be this, and wearing the rank of this and wearing the rank of that. We are not yet ready for that group consciousness, that each member and each unit in the group sees itself as you see each finger in your palm. Which one is more important than another? Which one will you cut away? When one hurts, all hurt. And that must be the spirit in which group consciousness is realized. When each unit and each member of the group is as vital and as important as any other. When that kind of group consciousness permeates the hearts and minds of human beings, I have no doubt that there will be such a powerful radiance that a great number of disease will come to an end. That a peace that we struggle in the United Nations to bring about will come about of its own accord. Because, we can spend enormous amount of money trying to establish many organizations to bring about peace, but we are riddled with many wars all over the place. We spend billions with improving medical equipment, but we are riddled with diseases. We have many means of producing ever more from our planet in terms of food and substance, and yet there are people in the world starving still. Hunger is still a problem in the world. We have not as yet ended hunger for humanity in the world. So there are many of these kinds of paradoxes in our everyday life. And it is necessary that we realize the truth that mankind is a concept. The reality is that there are individual units, and it is the individual unit that feels the pain, that feels the suffering, that feels the joy. And it is only when we find peace in our own inner individual heart and mind, because the individual units constitute the whole, then the whole shall have peace. Then the whole shall have the ending of hunger. Then the whole shall have the ending of disease, and so on and so forth. So it is in the individual, as Krishnamurti said, that the revolution of a new and original attitude to life needs to arise. And our minds and hearts need to become inflamed by that heroic spirit that will take new ideas, new ways, and say no to the old ways of the Piscean spirit of separation and clans and separate groups and so on and so forth. We are all the one species, mankind, human beings, and we all are our brothers and sisters keepers. And if we don't realize the truth of that, then we cannot enter the true spirit of the Aquarian age. And finally, the third decan of the Aquarius is actually influenced by the magnificent lady of our solar system, Lady Venus, Lady Aphrodite, the spirit of love. Not the love that has the enslaving of sex, but the love that liberates and reveals the essence of who we actually are, the oneness manifesting itself in the multiplicity of itself. And love, the message that the Lord Christ gave in advance of its time, has not really manifested. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Are we really able to put our hands in our hearts and say truly that we do that? Those that do are true heroic beings. And indeed, to live the heroic life is not a technique or a method, because a technique and a method is of the past, and living the heroic life is in the eternal now. Living the heroic life is not being lost in thoughts of one kind or another, because thoughts are also of the past. And living the heroic life is liberation from the past. Living the heroic life is not seeking for one kind of peak experience or another. It is really living imminently in each moment because the moment is not separate from the eternal, and thereby living in eternity. Living the heroic life is being free from the constrictions of the personality, individuality, and the selfish interest of the me, and acknowledging that the I am is immanent in all beings. Living the heroic life truly is expanding our consciousness to be inclusive of all our brothers and sisters. Living the heroic life is, in essence, to declare to yourself that you have a duty in the here and now to fulfill the task that is placed upon you by your own divine I am. What is that task? It is to integrate your personality, to align it and surrender it to the I am present, so that you may unfold through it its divine attributes of the will, the love, wisdom, and the creative intelligence. And as I have highlighted, only one of these tasks, the Aquarian task, in a synopsis form, you can see that cleansing our own stables is an essential part. And so when you face in your everyday life some difficulties, some obstacles, do not say that God has given you the short end of the stick. Acknowledge that perhaps it is an opportunity for you to free yourself from another part of your karma, from your negative karma. And so rejoice when life brings to you certain obstacles, because it gives you the opportunity to draw from the inexhaustible source of yourself greater powers, greater abilities to overcome the obstacles, and thereby realize your inherent potentiality and free yourself from karma. And so the cleansing of our physical, emotional, and mental bodies can allow us truly to have fulfilled the task of Aquarius, because when our body is clean, our emotions are pure, and our mind is still not disturbed by the prejudices and thoughts of one kind of selfish interest or another, then the beautiful swan may land upon the still lake. For there are 3 constellations that govern the Aquarius, and these 3 constellations are Perseus and Cygnus, the swan, and Perseus is the winged horse, symbol of the transmuted animal nature of the human being and transformed into the winged presence that can allow your consciousness to fly high to the mountaintop of initiation, to the mountaintop of realization. And it is said by Madame Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine that Cygnus the swan is the bird of the divine self, of the spiritual I am presence. And it is said that it represents the Aum. One of the wings is the A, the other of the wings is the U, and the M that unites the two is the head as the O and the tail as the M, when we pronounce it as Om. And so what does that symbolizes? It symbolizes the unity of our threefold nature, our personality, spirituality, and divinity. And so in Aquarius we have the opportunity to really transmute and transform our animal nature and make it that winged Pegasus that can truly allow the spirituality and the divinity of ourselves to manifest through it and reveal its divine attributes. My time has come to an end, unfortunately, and I have taken even a little bit more of your question time. So I will open it out now to questions. If you have any questions in what you have heard, I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Yes, my dear. Yes. Well, it's not really more the Greek government, it's more the Orthodox Christian religion that is fearing that the flock will start moving away from the churches where they collect the millions that they put in the Swiss bank accounts and whatever else. And so they are fearful of that. And every priesthood throughout the world, and I'm not saying anything about any individual, but there is also corruption in all the different priesthoods of the world, because they want to defend the temporal authority, becoming the mediators between humans and gods, when truly the human being does not need a mediator. He can make a direct appeal to the God presence in himself that is immanent, as well as in that which is transcendent. So I believe that they are not succeeding, because in the last time I gave some lectures in Athens to doctors and to dentists and to people of all walks of life. They are truly acknowledging that revolution where they are no longer willing to be the sheep, they are willing to be the gods. And it is a misunderstanding that religion has given us, assuming that when the Lord said at the end of time there will be the justice and the sheep shall be separated from the goats, we assume that all the sheep will go to heaven and all the goats will go to hell. But it is the goat that climbs to the mountaintop. Yes? It is in Capricorn that you attain initiation. Yes? And it is the sheep that are without their own attainment of individuality, spirituality, their own free will expression. And so we must not remain as sheep. We must become the goat and climb up the mountaintop of initiation and attain through the gate of Capricorn what is our task, what is our duty, what is our purpose, and thereby as beings of truth and love and light fulfill our particular part in the universal whole. Okay, my dear? It is the cleansed and purified psychic nature. Yes?
You said about when you get all this together and then you're giving out love and light. And there are periods in history, maybe the Renaissance, but in the 60s too, there were some really powerful leaders who were appealing to the human spirit.
Yeah.
And they didn't last. Even John Lennon, but you've got Hammarskjöld and Pope John 22 was quite old, but he put out stuff. And you said this, that the world, or those who haven't done it, are jealous of these people. And in the Bible you referred to Benjamin. I think the coat of many colours, though, is
Joseph, yes, sorry.
And the brothers were so jealous of his father.
Correct.
They put him down a well.
Correct, yes.
And that's now Gandhi lived an awful long time before he got burnt up. Was it because he was opposing the English, and the others were involved in other scenes? But how come he could last with truth in his heart that way, and others are eliminated?
Well, the question is actually multifaceted, because it cannot be answered simply with a yes or no or with a simple answer. Because to answer that question, we need to know the particular individual karma of those individuals that did not last, the particular karma of Gandhi, the particular stage of evolution that Gandhi was as a being, and the particular stage of those beings that you have mentioned, John Lennon. I do not believe that John Lennon was of the same status, though he gave to the world wonderful music and peace and beautiful message, of the same stage of unfolded and evolved consciousness as Gandhi was. So a lot depends on who the entity is. Many teachers establish in their lifetime a movement, a school of thought, and so on and so forth. But it is those great ones that their message lives far beyond their passing through this revolving door of incarnate existence, such as the Gandhis, the Jesus, the Buddhas, the St. Pauls, the St. Johns, and so many others, yeah? So it really does matter a lot with two elements, the individual status and karma of that being, and the particular public vocation that he has taken on board, and the timing of whether that its time has come or not. There are many harbingers, like St. John the Baptist was, who make a lot of preparation. They open the way. They produce they drop little stones in a pond and create some waves so that we may be touched by those waves, cause our minds to start inquiring, waking up, so that when a greater being comes, we are more prepared to actually touch the message, receive the message, acknowledge the message. Because it is said by one great teacher that you can meet a true master and never know that you have met him. You can meet a great master and know that he is a master and yet not benefit by it. And you can meet a great master, know that he is a master, and become illumined. And so this is the case every day and every moment of our life. Because truly, there is a master among us all the days of our lives. We have never been left as orphans. There are always masters in incarnate existence all over the world, and they do walk, breathe, live, and have their being amongst us. But we are seeking for these kinds of images that we have projected of the masters and not seeing the reality of who they are when they are amongst us. Because the master's voice may reveal itself through your partner. The master's voice may reveal itself through your friend, through your colleague, through anyone who happens to be near you at any one time. And if your ears are open and your heart is open and your mind is open, then you will receive the message. I tell you, I have learned many things in parties. I have learned many things at work. I have learned many things of wisdom in arguments, in many fields of human interaction. When others will see only an argumentative nonsense, he who is able to listen what is in those words, what is the energy behind the words, may actually perceive something beautiful, something good, something uplifting. And so it is up to each and every one of us to open our hearts and minds, to train our discerning faculty so that we may know when there is the false, when there is the true, when is the reality, and when it is not. Yes? So, okay, one more.
Yes, when we look at the war, all the war, the mass killing, the mass murder, the genocide in recent times, the past century, can we say that humanity is actually getting any better?
Yes, I see your question, but there are waves of human beings. You are not taking the bigger picture into equation because you are assuming that always the same level of intelligence of beings are incarnate in any one time. There are times, as this gentleman highlighted, of great spiritual uptake, like the Renaissance, like the golden era of the ancient Greece, where there were so many great philosophers, so many great scientists, so many great dramatists, all at the same time, yes? It was a great golden age. Now, there are certain advanced groups of souls which, when it is the appropriate time in the particular cycle of evolution, they incarnate and give an accelerated impulse to the whole evolution of mankind, and that takes an accelerated uptake. Then they withdraw, and younger souls incarnate, and they become permeated by those vibrations that were left behind. That gives them an accelerated evolution, but they are not as well-tuned, they are not as purified, they are not as advanced, and therefore they make some mistakes, and therefore the high status that was attained starts declining. Is it not the same with the history of all nations and civilizations? A great impulse comes, the civilization rises, reaches its peak, and then it starts declining. And so the movement of evolution is in waves, yes? And if you watch at the sea in a summer's evening, you will see that when one wave is crashing on the shore, a new one is actually being prepared deep in the sea. And so it is with the evolution waves of the spiritual dispensations. We are evolving, we are moving, but it is not at the same time always that all the evolved beings are manifested. They come in cycles so that all beings are able to have the opportunity. It is said by a great master that there are 60 billion human souls that are evolving upon this planet. There is only 6 billion at any one time incarnate on this physical plane. Therefore, you can see that the greater proportion is in the higher planes, astral, mental, spiritual, and so on and so forth. And so, yes, we are evolving, but at any phase when you are looking at all the troubles and you are looking at what is actually happening in the world, it may be a time when there is not these greater, more advanced souls in incarnation. But it is now, in this Aquarian age, that more of these advanced beings are incarnating and look for masters in the young children of today, of the babes that are being born today. You will see them, you will find them. You will find beings who are from very, very young age. I know of one near where I live. He's only 2 years old. When he first came, there was such a presence of peace, such radiance, such an incredible beauty and presence in that being. This being is an advanced